So welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about the indexes clear, collect, and collect. And specifically, we want to talk about indexes on these collections. Now, first of all, let's clarify one thing. The collections inside of the Power applications are really just in-memory tables. That's it. When I use the term collections, you may be thinking that's not even possible. And you would be correct on a technical term or technical sense, right? So there is no way to set an index. However, you can create the illusion of an index, and there's a benefit to it. So it actually works like an index. So the collections and the way Power Platform works, or specifically in a Canvas app, is when you have a collection and you try to perform certain operations on that collection, the Power Platform tries to help you as much as it can, right? And so essentially what it's going to try to do, or what you may not know is it's trying to do behind the scenes, is it's trying to find a column that it can use or latch on to that has some distinct information or distinct data. And so as you can see on screen here, I have 5 rows, right? And I have 2 columns. One is the index column, and then I just have another column that has a value in it. And you may be thinking, okay, that's no big deal. But if you look at it in the context, let's look at this for all button here. And let's pop this open just a little bit. So essentially what I'm doing is the middle item is probably the most powerful thing that I want to focus on. But what I want to do is I want to iterate through this collection. And in order to iterate through it and patch it at the same time, I have to create a temp collection, which essentially is a copy of the original collection. And it's because of this weird thing with for all loops. You can't loop through the same collection you're trying to patch, so you have to create yet a second copy of the collection. And in any event, so when you're doing that, notice what I'm doing here. I'm patching, but I'm not doing defaults, right? So I'm trying to update an existing row. And I only want to update the particular row as it exists in the iteration. But notice that I only have this record being used here. So this record is essentially going to bring back the row, and in this case it's row column 1, and which is the ID, and then you've got the value. And so I have a lot of things in this table with value, 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 and when I run through this update, you'll notice that it goes ahead and it works as designed, and I don't get any issues with it, right? And so I've updated all of the values because that's essentially what I was trying to do in the code. And I only used a reference to this record. So the Power Platform or Power Automate was looking at the collection and saying, okay, how can I try to find out which row that this matches up with, for this record? Because this record is part of the for all loop, right? It doesn't know for the patch. And I didn't say, column 1 equals column 1. I mean, I could write that out, right? But if you do these types of shortcuts, you're going to get burned potentially if you don't have an index column, because it's going to be like, okay, which row needs to be updated? So you're going to get strange behavior. You may have multiple rows getting updated with inaccurate information, and you may struggle through all of that. So indexing in this particular use case is a good idea. So I would always just use it as a best practice, because the more you get to use it and the more you see it being used, and then if you go trying, not using it again in the future, you'll notice that it was much easier and much better as a best practice to just, put an index in there. It's only a numeric column, right? And there's always going to be a unique one. And so what I want to do in this exercise is also talk about some of the things that you're going to have to work through. And I want you to download the example file to look and see how I did this. So let me bring your attention to this yellow item. So basically I'm using the count function for just column 1, right? And I'm saying just count the rows. I could have used column 2, but I chose column 1, right? And so that's just a simple count function. But notice something else unique. When I go ahead and I play this again, if I just say add, it adds a 6 and it says the value. Now this form over here allows me to create and update an existing row. So right now I'm clicking 4, right here's 4 update. But if I click off, right, and we'll cover that in another video. But if I go ahead and create a new record, it automatically knows that 7 is the next item in the list, right? Because it doesn't exist, but I'm going to create a new item, right? So I'll choose new item and see it has 7. And now that I've done that, now we go to the next one, 8. And you might be saying, all right, well, how are you doing that? Well, if I look at this particular field, I'm sitting here saying, get me the max column for column 1, which is going to return 7. And then what I want to do is I want to say 7 plus 1. And then that's going to give me 8, right? So using the max function for the particular database and column, and then just bringing that back again and then adding 1 to it, I can increase the index of that. Okay, so that's kind of neat the way that that happens. I also have that same programmatic functionality happening over here, but I'm also doing something unique, because watch this. I have if count for the column 1. In other words, I'm counting the rows in the database, and I'm saying, hey, listen, if there's no data in the database at all, then make the first item that I put into the database as 1. And let me show you why I put that in there. Because I have the ability to delete things inside of the app. Let me go ahead and play this again. And if I just delete everything out of here, now that if that I just showed you comes into play, because it's saying there's 0, there's no rows here. And because there's no rows, I need my first row to always have a 1. So if I click add, then 1. And then now this if evaluates the false. So now it's going to go ahead and say, okay, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 plus 1 is 4, so on and so forth. And so now you can see my index clicking or counting up. So in addition to just using indexing, there's some other stuff like this that you need to learn how to increment and how to handle and deal with the index then if you're going to put that into your table. So if that's too much overhead, I understand. But again, the benefit is you can use things like the for all update, and specifically you can use the shortcut of this record as you're iterating and looping through, and it knows exactly what it's trying to do because it knows to use that index column because it's distinct and unique and will always be distinct and unique if you do these other things that I just showed you here by making sure that there is never a duplicate row, because again, collections are in memory. They're really not indexes. There's no constraint around the object of a collection, right? You have to kind of create this makeshift stuff yourself. And so that's what this was all about. So hopefully this video was helpful, and this was all about indexing and some of the little nuances and how that can actually help you solve problems that you may see coming up in the event that you have these collections that don't have an index on them. Okay, that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.